the Geneva Convention has become, the Geneva checklist. G'day Legends, I hope that you're all doing well. Now, we're going to look at a couple of videos today. We'll talk about some laws, and then we'll have a look at some changes on the map. So, Ukrainian intelligence chief Major General Kirilo Budanov has had this clip go viral, saying in which the conflict will end soon. So, let's watch this one together.
The start of the latest invasion was correct. What is your prediction about when this ends?
In very, very nearest future.
Near future?
Very nearest.
Why are you so confident?
Because I know this.
Now, this goes against pretty much every other intelligence source, saying that this war will drag out well past this year with no diplomatic solutions and well into next year, and that they're preparing for a really prolonged war. Now, we've also seen Zelensky visit soldiers in almost surrounded Avdiivka, and Putin visit soldiers in the Kherson region. Now, the video of Zelensky awarding troops has been geolocated to this location here. So you're looking right in the center of Avdiivka as Avdiivka slowly becomes surrounded. Now, this was geolocated from GeoConfirmed, who have been brilliant in the past as well. So this is the video of Zelensky as they move in through the city. And he gives out a number of awards. So what we see is from these photographs here, this is how it was geolocated as when they're walking around these areas. Putin has visited the headquarters of the Russian army in the Kherson region. And this is the video here as Putin jumps out of this helicopter with some guys on the ground, and they are moving through. Notice this sign with the Russian flag on top, and he meets a number of senior members in the headquarters. We see this sign with the Russian flag atop, and you can actually find this sign on Google Maps as well, and this was geolocated to this region here, so just above Crimea in the Kherson Oblast, but a long way still from the front line, but still within range of weapons we have seen used by Ukraine. Now, people have said, why isn't Russia targeting Zelensky? And I've seen a lot of people differing on this. And my opinion is, the last thing Russia actually want is to take out Zelensky. Zelensky is really probably the most loved leader in the world right now. I've been pretty open that I'm not a huge fan of Zelensky, with a lot of scandals caught up with in the past, but there is no fact that he's probably the most loved and most famous world leader right now, and taking him out, although short term may be a win for Russia, I think it would have massive effect on how the West actually see this, of not just targeting combatants, but then targeting leaders, and could turn on Russia even further, and more sanctions, more weapons, things like that. So I don't actually think Russia really has any want to take out Zelensky, as it could go worse for. Now, there's also been this video captioned when there was a demand for an evacuation on a tractor stolen by orcs, as they refer to Russian soldiers, apparently already damaged or broken UAZ 452, which is basically just a Russian-made van. Suddenly, there was no one to evacuate Bukhanka. Now, this video shows a FPV drone being used by the Ukrainian armed forces, taking out, coming around, circling around this tractor, and then coming around the front. Notice it says land now. I'm guessing this is a low battery warning. And as we see this drone target this tractor and move in, and eventually has a impact or a kamikaze impact with the front of the tractor towing the van. And this is apparently more footage at the end here of this hitting the tractor. And this was geolocated to here, what sits just above Bakhmut, as you can see near Berkivka. Now, this, as far as the geolocation, was done through this image here. So this is from GeoConfirmed as well. Like I said, this was widely shared and celebrated. That said, I can't see any military markings on the vehicle. Now, I'm not saying it isn't, and what we don't know is we don't know the events leading up, and this only shows a small bit of this. From the video, it doesn't look like a military vehicle or marked, and that could be on both sides, that Russia should be marking their military vehicles as well, not just have white Vand? Or could it be that land now warning trying to find a target? It's not my place to tell you if it was or wasn't a civilian vehicle, a military vehicle, whatever. I can let you guys speculate on that and make up your own minds. I'm just to show the footage. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong, but I want to talk about civilians and combatants and what differentiates the two in a war. Participating in conflict and then becoming targetable is very easy, and it's a very, very fine line between non-combatant and combatant. Now, I've been very critical of the humanitarian volunteers working that I've seen in Ukraine, claiming protected status under that, but then moving military equipment in humanitarian marked vehicles or just moving military equipment at all. That eliminates your status. I also think that with all the press wearing camouflage and not clearly marking or even attempting to wear black or blue press like that is walking a fine line. Although it doesn't immediately negate your rights, but some self-responsibility is needed. And there are videos from Russian press in areas that are in full camouflage, no press patches, things like that. It's like, well, as a soldier myself, and also then being press in a war zone at points, I can really see how that can actually happen. But we see this on both sides, and I've been hugely critical of Ukraine promoting civilians to use Molotov cocktails. And Molotov cocktails are classified as a lethal weapon and to absolutely remove your civilian protections. At that point, you are a combatant. Now, I've done the riot control courses with the military, and we've gone over these laws. And if you have a Molotov cocktail, I'm well within my rights to use lethal force on you. Now, on the 25th of February 22, a day after the start of the war, Ukrainian officials announced they hand over 18,000 weapons to volunteers, as well as issuing instructions on how to make petrol bombs, or these Molotov cocktails. This in military circles was widely discussed and critiqued. Now, Charles J. Dunlap Jr., the former Deputy Judge Advocate General of the United States Air Force, it's a mouthful, but the US love long introduction of people, has said he's concerned that the Russians may contend that the Ukrainian government's call to arms, along with the lack of a distinctive sign designating those who have joined the levée. Now, the levée en masse is a French term used for a policy of mass national conscription, has turned the entire sentient adult population in Ukraine into lawful targets. Now, this would be incorrect, as not everyone will join the levée en masse, and the burden remains on the attacker to have reasonable good faith belief that a target is a lawful one. That is, a member of the levée en masse, as difficult as that determination can be. Basically saying it is wrong legally for the Russians to have this idea that everyone, is part of this, but they fear that they would see it that way, and there's been some evidence in areas that this may has been what has happened. A scholar and senior analyst of the open source defense intelligence provider Janes has said spontaneous uprising of the civilian population against an invading force has long been part of the modern law of armed conflict with regard to determining who may legitimately participate in armed conflict. The concept originated during the Revolutionary Wars in America and France and was incorporated in the first codified rules of armed conflict. However, despite the prevalence of the category levée en masse in the modern laws of armed conflict, there have been a few, if any, instances of levée en masse taking place in modern conflict. Now, this obviously was written before this conflict. There are laws of armed conflict requirements and implications of a levée en masse. The ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, defines it in this way: the term applied to the inhabitants of a territory which have not been occupied, who on the approach of the enemy spontaneously take up arms to resist the invading troops without having had time to organise themselves into regular armed forces. They must be regarded as combatants if they carry arms openly and respect the laws and customs of armed conflict. If captured, they have the right to be treated as prisoners of war. Now, while I'm deep in the papers of the International Committee of the Red Cross and the laws of armed conflict, next I want to talk about this common idea that in an illegal invasion, soldiers, in this case Russian soldiers, aren't protected by the laws of armed conflict. Now, many use this as a way to justify rough Ukrainian actions and say Ukraine can't commit a crime if the invasion itself is illegal. Now, this is completely false, as I see this plastered everywhere. The wrongness or rightness of a belligerent's resort to force does not determine the application of the laws of armed conflict. The laws of armed conflict apply to the belligerent parties irrespective of the reasons for the conflict or the justness of the causes for which they are fighting. If it were otherwise, implementing the law would be impossible, since every party would claim to be the victim of aggression. Moreover, the IHL, the International Humanitarian Law, is intended to protect victims of armed conflicts regardless of party affiliation. That is why jus in bello must remain independent of jus ad bellum. Now, what are these terms? Simply put, jus ad bellum is traditionally perceived as the law which provides grounds justifying the transition from peace to armed force, going into war, while jus in bello is deemed to define the conduct and responsibility of belligerent nations, neutral nations, and individual engagement in the armed conflict in relation to each other and protected persons, soldiers, civilians, and all the other parties involved. This means Russian soldiers are still governed and protected, as are Ukrainian soldiers, of which some pro-Russian will claim Ukraine isn't a state, therefore they aren't protected, which is false as well. But this means soldiers of either side can be held accountable, but are also protected. Now, I know this stuff is boring and lame, but I read a lot of people's, this is law or war crime posts, and they are often incorrect, like the use of incendiary munitions or targeting civilian or critical infrastructure. Facts matter. In no way am I justifying any of this, but facts and the law matter, as we will soon be involved in a conflict, sooner rather than later, and we should be held to a standard we set, and we should hold allies and our enemy to the same standard. Now, I know it won't always go like this. So in so many cases where the Geneva Conventions become, the Geneva checklist, but hence, this is why I think, we should arrest Bush and Blair alongside the arrest of President Putin. Holding a standard, whether it is in line with your viewpoint or not, is incredibly important, and not just turning a blind eye because it agrees with your side, your narrative, or where you want to go with it. Now, my rant done. Let's have a look at the maps and look at what we have seen change. So, of course, in the center here, we have Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv. The red area occupied since 22, and the purple since 14. The green area is liberated by Ukraine since 22. Down here being Crimea, and this being Donetsk. We've got Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here, and I won't leave you out Moldova down there. So, let's go in on Bakhmut, and this map updated on the 18th, although it is the 19th in Australia. So let's step back a day, as we know it didn't update till very late yesterday, and see what we saw. So what we did see is a marginal gain down in the southeast, which we did see the day before, and then some marginal gain in the north. Now, there are different maps showing that there is a lot more gain in the north, and we will look over some of this. But up and down the front line, we haven't seen any other territorial changes but little creeping bits in Bakhmut. W map, so we're bringing this up, and this is yesterday's map, or maybe the day before, but it didn't change day to day. So let's just have a look and see what we see. So as we do know from yesterday that there was some ground taken in the south and pushed up above this road. Now, what we do see on today's map is across the train line here, right in the center of the train lines here, that Russia has pushed. We see this road where it's coming into this L. Russia has claimed at least that they have pushed well beyond this road, or a couple of blocks beyond this road, and in the north as well, have pushed up from their positions where, if we see this green area and this road looping down here, this is the green area and the road looping down here. So Russia has, moved their assessed control further up, but their claimed control remains very similar, except for right in the center. So let's compare that map, as always, across to the Rybar map. And as well, this map won't be the most clear map in the world, but what it is showing is a greater push on the north than we see on any of these maps. So we take this reservoir and this reservoir here. As all these maps don't show the equivalent, Google map on the ground of the roads, it's so hard to compare them. So we just need to make almost like estimated gains off things. So we look at, where the reservoir is and some other key little features. But we do see that Russia is claiming that they're a long way further to the south in the north than this ISW map is showing, but the rest is showing fairly similar. So in the south, it's showing fairly similar, if not less claimed control and controlled on the Rybar map. But in the north, it is showing more along this road through Kromove in. So this is why we compare multiple maps, because multiple maps show different things. But legends, the territorial changes have been very slow, but I have a few friends saying to me that over the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, and I know I've been saying this for a while, that we will start to see changes as Ukraine's offensive rolls into full action. As we're seeing new vehicles every day coming into Ukraine, with the camouflage paint on them, and at some point we'll start seeing these Western vehicles being used in combat. Now, I know today's might have been a little bit different, but I actually enjoy researching this and teaching myself about these laws, and it's a bit of my back history on actually knowing some of this stuff from the military as well. But look after yourself. If you'd like to support me, Links down below, but never feel obliged. Look after yourself, and tomorrow we'll have a fitness update as well. So look after yourselves. Bye-bye.